I found out my 31 male, ex-wife 27 female, cheated on me while she was pregnant. Now she says I'm emotionally manipulative because I'm cold and distant during custody switches. Plus update. Last year, while she was 6 months pregnant, I, 31 male, discovered that my now ex-wife 27 female had been cheating on me. The affairs occurred both before and after the pregnancy. She had reasons and excuses for not getting a divorce. She wanted to be together and have couples counseling. I advised her to go ahead and receive treatment, but infidelity was a deal breaker for me, so we divorced. She moved back in with her parents, who had ample space to build up a nursery, and gave my ex the guest room since the home was mine when we married. My wife has our daughter Sunday, Wednesday, and the original plan was for her to drop her off at daycare on Wednesday morning, and my nanny would pick her up around noon and bring her back to my house, where my daughter would stay with me until Saturday night or Sunday morning, depending on what worked best for everyone. Then my ex stated she feared the daycare was misplacing some of the items she was bringing in for her to bring to my house, since our daughter had come home a few times without certain bottles or her binky. So ex stated she wanted to drop our kid off at our home straight to ensure that all of her belongings arrived at my place. So she began bringing her up from daycare and dropped her off here during her breaks. On Wednesdays and Fridays, I work from home. Nonetheless, I'm working. It was usually about 12:30 when ex started dropping Nadine down at my place. Since I was in my office working, my daughter's nanny, a wonderful elderly woman from Barbados, not sure of her age, but I'd estimate late 50s, 60s, was the one to open the door for my ex and remove my daughter and her belongings. When she arrived, ex said that she wanted to meet with me personally. She felt like she was dumping a lot on the nanny and didn't want her to forget to tell me anything, she said. I'd be lying if I claimed I didn't have animosity and hate against my ex. But I don't want my daughter to see that, so when I speak to my ex, I try to be as emotionally equal as possible, just talking about topics that are relevant to my daughter and nothing else. Nadine had a dirty diaper at today's drop-off, so her nanny brought her upstairs to change her. When my ex inquired how I was, I told her I was fine and thanked her before beginning to go back to my office. She sees herself out. She used to live there. You know, I'm getting really sick of your trash, she says as I walk away. I didn't even get a chance to ask her what she was talking about before she began flipping out, screaming I was emotionally manipulating her by being cold and aloof, that she shouldn't be punished eternally for her sins, and that hating her is the same as hating my kid. I let her finish ranting before telling her to go. I believe my best option is to avoid further interaction with her and to stop seeing her for drop-offs. But I was hoping to get some other viewpoints or ideas on the subject from you if you have any. Edit. I took a paternity test after discovering she cheated and my baby is mine. Update. I've discovered Talking Parents, which I hope will be a valuable resource for my ex-wife and me. The thing I have to constantly telling myself is that the unpleasant and betrayed sentiments I have for my ex-wife will most likely dissipate in 5 or 10 years, but a hostile relationship between the two of us would have a long-term effect on our daughter. As a result, I met down with my ex-wife and taped a talk regarding our predicament. I was really honest and forthright with her. I informed her that although I still had bad sentiments for her as my ex-wife, as the mother of my kid, I would always treat her civilly and politely, but that we needed to set limits. I informed her that we're going back to our original plan of dropping her off at daycare in the mornings and having my nanny pick her up in the afternoons. We'll convey which products should be delivered home with her through the internet, so the nanny can double-check that she has everything. My ex-wife isn't pleased. I believe she came to my home in the hopes of reconciling, but I informed her gently, but unequivocally, that it was never going to happen, but I would want to see our relationship blossom as fantastic co-parents of a lovely young girl, and maybe one day, friends. Story 2. Husband cheated on me while pregnant with our first child. My 8-year husband cheated on me when I was pregnant with our first kid. We have always loved each other and have done all necessary to remain together, but we had a difficult time after marriage owing to so many duties on his family's side and things that impacted him emotionally and gave him a tremendous lot of stress. I was always committed and patient, but these things, as well as his absence, took their toll on me, and I became uneasy at times. I always gave him space and was never financially or otherwise reliant on him, and I always made sure I wasn't an added burden. In fact, I constantly strove to soothe him. I became pregnant, but he was unprepared and under a lot of stress. My pregnancy was quite difficult, and I was often unwell. We scarcely saw each other since I was either at work or in bed resting or vomiting early in the mornings or late at night. I sensed him becoming more distant and dissatisfied with the pregnancy. For me, it was a tremendously emotionally and physically exhausting moment. I couldn't get to his heart, no matter how hard I tried. As I began to feel better in the 7th month of pregnancy and was able to do things and try to persuade him to look forward to the baby, I saw he began to soften towards me again, and I felt loved again, and he would occasionally weep and say he failed me or that I didn't deserve this trash. He was nice and loving again, but there was still a barrier between them. He was still distant in certain ways. By chance, 3 weeks before my due date, I discovered he was in a relationship with someone I met the same month I found out I was pregnant. He'd invited her and many other people to our house for supper and wanted to introduce us so we could become friends. We kept in contact through WhatsApp, but my pregnancy made it difficult for me to continue that friendship. I had no idea they had developed such a deep bond in such a short period of time. The night I discovered out, I read a lot of their WhatsApp log. Their objective was for him to divorce me as quickly as possible and marry her, and the baby was considered as a problem. They didn't appear to have a strategy for when, how, or with whom the infant would remain. They dated, made out, and when she moved out of the country, she's from overseas, he traveled to visit her and they spent a couple of weeks together right before I found out. I assumed he was on business. They were planned other vacations overseas together. I was really taken aback and devastated. Anything like this could never have happened to me, especially after I had given up so much and committed more than a decade of my life to this person who had always valued loyalty and was both passionate and loving. Every time I close my eyes, I can still hear him telling her that she was a gift and that she had brought him back to his sense of happiness. But he was also terrified of hurting either me or her, and he was well aware that someone would be injured. She said that she was aware of the dangers and that she was certain that it would eventually work. When I saw him the last month, I knew he was miserable and in anguish, but I imagined it was because of the way he had treated me over the whole pregnancy. He was vocal about his displeasure with himself on a regular basis. When I informed him, he was horrified to see me in such distress. He admitted that he'd made a mistake, that he wasn't himself, and that he was praying for a way out. He explained that he hadn't been in the proper frame of mind after a lot of stress, and that he wasn't prepared for the pregnancy, and that he was afraid the baby would take me away from him, and that when I wasn't accessible, he assumed he'd lost track of me. It was the most difficult time of my life to be pregnant. Physical and mental torture were inflicted on the prisoners. At first, I was heartbroken that he couldn't be there for me, but then I discovered that he'd been dating someone else at the time, and the two of them were conspiring to desert me. Put another way, this is the stuff of nightmares for me. He has ended his connection with her at this point. It was a complete and utter disaster that lasted months. He had swiftly asked for my forgiveness, and I had graciously accepted his request. Since the beginning of this ordeal, I've had 2 attacks of panic. That isn't me. I haven't spoken to anybody about it. I don't have faith in anybody, and I can't afford to see a therapist right now. I have significant issues with trusting other people. I've been feeling better in general. He loves our child, takes good care of us, and expresses compassion toward me, and I can sense his sorrow and love for me. A single event, recollection, or trigger may put me in a state of extreme anguish and sorrow, and my heart feels like it's going to burst into flames. I'm no longer able to glimpse into the future. I can't imagine seeing my child grow up alongside my husband and myself. I can't see either our child or ourselves as grown-ups at this point. I'm continuously paranoid that I'm about to die. I've been feeling a little disconnected lately. My sleep is disrupted by frequent nightmares. Despite the fact that I have forgiven him completely, the sorrow continues to afflict me.